Good morning, everyone. My name is Leanne Rhodes. Some of you might recognize my face, and I am the NSBC Creative Director. On behalf of the NSBC and world famous events, and of course, our sponsors, Experian, I would like to welcome you all to Breakfast Connect and the first event of our How to Become Financially Fit series. On stage with me today is none other than the NSBC founder and CEO, Mike Anderson, a familiar face to our regulars as well. Mike is a lifelong entrepreneur and author, an exceptional speaker. He is not going to be the speaker today, though. He's going to ask all the questions. So I'm really looking forward to that, Mike. And I truly have never met anyone with a heart that is more passionate about seeing small businesses in South Africa grow and thrive. So a very warm welcome to you, Mike.
Leanne, always good to our second event of the year. Great to be, and thank you for that awesome intro. You always make me feel slightly embarrassed, but and yeah, Leanne, thanks to you for putting this all together, and we're looking forward to this morning. You know, it's such a big campaign. It's such an important campaign. You know, how to get financial, and we're certainly looking forward to not only engaging with Thabo in a few minutes, but of course the Experian team over the months and years to come, because we know that this is going to make a massive difference to all business owners out there, whether you're a business owner or a consumer in your own right. So I'm looking forward to Leanne.
Oh, absolutely. Me too, Mike. Wonderful. So, Mike, a little bit earlier, we alluded to the fact that this campaign is really imperative for small business owners if they want to run a successful business. Won't you tell us a little bit more about the How to Become Financially Fit campaign?
First of all, this is very personal for me, and I'll tell you why. You know, over the years at the NSBC, I've seen so many thousands of business owners being rejected from getting funding, getting home loans, from buying cars, from leasing properties, because their credit score isn't the way it should. And for me, I've always known this, and maybe many people don't. It's so simple to get to know your personal credit score and your business score, and it's also, there's an easy way to fix it, so that you can build your credit score and you can become financially fit quite quickly. So what's exciting about this whole campaign is really talking about the importance of getting financially fit, understanding exactly what you need to do to get your own personal and business credit score, and then if there's something wrong, exactly what you need to do to fix it now. And for me, we know that because of Experian, we're going to change the lives of many people out there, business owners and entrepreneurs around the country. So I'm super excited about this. It's not always just about borrowing money. There's many other reasons, but certainly the foundation of any business or even one own person is to make sure that your credit score is high, and always, and on an ongoing basis, Leanne, keep checking it once or twice a year. You know, right now it's free, and of course it's quite easy. And as you said earlier offline, you've done it yesterday, and it's so easy to do it, and everyone should do it.
Absolutely, Mike. And like you say, it's these small details. It's the things that you need to pay attention to as a business owner to ensure your success in the future. So moving on to the next event or the next part of our discussion today, tell us a little bit about who is coming up, and then I will leave you all until the end of the session for a few more tips before we go into the networking.
Great, Leanne. Thank you for that intro, and we'll see you just now. All right, now we're going to the exciting part of the morning, and I'm personally looking forward to it. I've been chatting to Thabo for a while, and super exciting, super interesting. And I know together this morning, I've got some great questions for him. We're going to kind of answer many questions that we've got throughout South Africa this morning in a nutshell in the next 40 minutes or so. So I'd like to welcome Thabo on stage. Thabo, please join me. Let's just wait for Thabo. Thabo, good morning to you. Truly grateful to have you on board this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invite. I'm actually looking forward to this. Seeing some of those emoji responses does create quite an audience.
Pretty much exciting. Now Thabo Hermanus is the Chief of Credit and Bureau Services for Experian Africa. top of his game. He's the right man to talk to. And, you know, I was talking to Thabo, I was talking to you earlier offline, and why I said Hermanus first is because I love your surname. And, you know, and I said to you, you know, my favorite Sauvignon Blanc is Hermanus Pietersfontein, Colfoot Macy Sauvignon Blanc. Now, if anybody out there enjoys Sauvignon Blanc, you got to try it. But unfortunately, Thabo said he prefers red wine. Is that correct, Thabo?
Mike, yes, unfortunately, that's what I prefer. It doesn't mean I don't drink some Sauvignon Blancs, but Hermanus Pietersfontein obviously has a special place in my heart by nature of the name. In fact, I love going to Hermanus because I have a party trick that I go there and I say to people what discount I get if my surname is Hermanus.
Thabo, thank you very much. Now, of course, I've got some amazing questions here, Thabo, for our interactive Q&A this morning. And I know we're going to enlighten and educate and hopefully change the mindset of many out there of the importance of frequently checking one's own personal credit score, and for business owners also to check their business score. Now, my big first question here, Thabo, is I know that Experian and NSBC have entered into a big partnership for months to come. Of course, how to become financially fit. But my question to you is, why is Experian partnering with the NSBC to deliver how to become financially fit campaign?
Well, I think the short response to that, Mike, is why would we not partner with people that are actually dedicating themselves to helping people and their businesses grow and thrive, right? That's my short response. But a little bit more to that is a couple of events at play, particularly after the pandemic. You know, I think 2020 caused a lot of people to pause and reflect. And out of that, one of the initiatives and campaigns that came out of Experian globally is the United for Financial Health campaign. And what we looked at, we said, given what's just happened to everybody, particularly people in their businesses, how do we, with our expertise and tools, help people to actually rebuild and become more resilient in terms of where they're trying to go and grow? Add to that, that in South Africa, as Experian, we see ourselves as a good corporate citizen. So participating in the communities that we operate in and helping them grow is within our DNA. And given the reach that the NSBC has and the dedication that they have to actually helping SMEs grow, it just made sense to us to partner with the NSBC.
Well, Thabo, we're very grateful for that. Thank you for that. Now, my next question is a very, there's a lot of confusion around this question. What is the role of the credit bureau?
Right. You know, Mike, I've had a very interesting career in terms of the places that I've worked. And one would think that one of them I'd be liked if I mentioned who I was at a braai. And you can imagine a credit bureau always becomes very awkward when you mention what you do. But the role of a credit bureau, let me imagine yourself, we're walking down the street, it's me and you, we're walking down the street, and a guy comes up to us, doesn't look aggressive, so he confronts us, and he comes to you and he points to you and says, Mike, my name is Pule. I've been baking biscuits for the last 2 years. It's a growing business. I'm doing it out of my kitchen, from my kitchen oven that I bake. But my sales are growing. I'm pumping, Mike. I'm really going. But my problem is my orders, I'm getting slower and slower in delivering them. So I need a new, bigger oven. And I've actually got my hands on an industrial oven. But I've raised enough funding, but I need another 4,500 rands to actually purchase this oven. Can you lend it to me? And I'll pay you back over 24 months. Now, highly likely, you're looking at this guy, and as good as his story is, you're going to fumble because you don't know him from a bar of soap. But imagine what happens if you're standing next to me and you say, Thabo, do you know who this Pula person is? And I say to you, actually, we also know that Pula borrowed money from John when he started his baking business. He borrowed some money to build his stock. He paid back that money over 6 months and he did it quite well. He definitely has been in business for the past 24 months, as he says. His business is growing and it is thriving. It's highly likely going to change the decision that you're going to make about whether you're going to lend or not. That pretty much is where a credit bureau comes in, is that we're an information custodian. We collect information from different sources that tell you about people's payment behavior and businesses' payment behavior. That tells you about how they're performing. And based on that, what we believe in credit a lot is the past is a good prediction of the future. You can then infer whether somebody's got that ability to pay you back or not. That's pretty much what we do as a credit bureau.
Okay. Great explanation, Thabo. Now, tell us a little bit more about Experian, Thabo.
Experian. So Experian is a global company with the largest information services business. So we're the largest credit bureau in South Africa. That I like to argue, and I've got some colleagues who we actually joke about that. We're a large information services business. We don't only do bureau services, we do decision systems, so software. We do analytics that adds around the software and the data. And we're quite global, about 20,000 employees. In Africa, our footprint, South Africa is our biggest spot, where we're in 6 countries within the African continent, with South Africa being our biggest office.
Okay, great stuff. Yeah, of course, I think most people know Experian, the brand, and of course what you guys do. Now, Thabo, why is managing your credit wellness so very important?
So it's always a tricky question, that one, because unfortunately people feel the pain of managing their credit wellness because it's something that you should have been doing up front. And there's this joke that I always hear, it's something to the effect of, a bank is an institution that gives you an umbrella when it's sunny and wants to take the umbrella away when it's raining. And it's a funny joke, but I think it simplifies a very complex situation, in that if you don't manage your credit wellness up front, the events that are carrying on there are the ones that will be telling at the point in time where you need that credit. So I always say to people that your credit wellness is your ticket to the game, is the way to think about it. Credit is leverage if you're looking to grow the business. And if you don't have a ticket to the game, you don't get to participate. So you want to be in a position where, as you're conducting yourself, how you're running your business, how you're running your personal life, you're actually aware of what you're doing and the implications that it has. A joke I like to tell people is, when I was a student, I didn't know much about credit bureaus. I had an Edgar's account, and sometimes come month end, given the choice between going partying and paying my installment, I always went partying. But I never understood what I was doing to my payment profile and credit history on the Edgar's side by not paying them on time. The good thing is, Mike, I did always pay. I just didn't pay as I was supposed to be. So my score could have been a lot better than it was then.
Okay, great. Oh, good explanation. Now, getting down to an important question from SME South Africa: how can a business credit report help an SME in accessing finance?
Now, that's often an underlooked thing, because your business credit report is going to give insight as to, if we use the Pula example that we were talking to, it's going to give insight as to how the business is performing, what it's capable of in terms of managing the payments, what its stresses are, and therefore whether it can be granted the credit or not. We often focus on the credit you didn't get, but sometimes it's a good thing if the decision was the right decision, because what you also don't want to do is get too much leverage into your business that breaks you, because we all say that cash is king, and we know that cash is king. So when you don't have it when you need it, and you've taken on too much credit and it's starting to wind down, it does become quite painful. But typically, when you're performing in a way that's visible for other lenders to see you, or credit providers or trade credit, it then gives you the ability to get your trade credit for buying your stock up front without paying for it, so that you've got the opportunity to add value to it and sell it.
Okay. Now, Thabo, dispelling some of the myths, what are some of the misperceptions about a credit bureau?
Mike, I could go on for days about this one. I'll try to get away from the sarcastic ones, but let me tell you what we don't do. We don't know anything about your political affiliation, who you voted for at the last elections, or things like that, because sometimes I've heard people worry about what we know as credit bureau, and I go, wow, if we really knew that, I wonder what we could do with it. But we only look at information that helps us predict risk. And those will be different information pieces in terms of mostly related to your payment behavior, in terms of how the credit bureau is structured today. So what we don't do, as an example, is blacklist people. So it's not in our interest to make you any lesser or have no access. In fact, by nature of the way the National Credit Act was constructed, it was about giving people access to credit, equitable access to credit. Credit that's affordable, not cheap, affordable and fair. Because in the past, people did not necessarily have access to all these things. So credit bureaus facilitate that by giving more visibility about the consumer or the business so that the decision to grant credit or not makes sense. The other thing that I would say is a myth that pretty much gets people confused is we don't make the decision as a credit bureau whether the credit is granted or not. Remember, we're presenting a picture of you, Mike, of how you've performed in the past based on certain transactions or credit relationships that you've had, for then the lender to make a decision to say, well, based on that, how likely are you going to be able to afford what you're taking on? And would you pay it back within the terms that they're going to set for you and agree with? The other myth, I think, is people think that they can't access their credit report, which is why we asked the question up front. People think that your credit report is only available to credit providers. That's not true. From a consumer perspective, you can access your own credit profile by logging onto our website. And similarly, from a business perspective, although that process is a little bit more longer in terms of the feedback loop, because the verification of making sure that who you say you are is who you are, because we can only give you information about you. We can't, as a credit bureau, give you information about Leanne, for instance. And it's the credit. I think the big one is more around the blacklisting that I'm more sensitive to, that I want to harp on about, is in terms of how your credit profile works. You've almost got to think that you want to be seen on a credit bureau rather than not be on a credit bureau. Because I think there's a perception that says that you're only on a credit bureau when you're negative, and that's not the case. In fact, 99% of the data on our credit bureau is positive data in South Africa.
That's interesting. Okay. Now, Thabo, what information is on a personal credit report?
That's actually a good segue on to the next one. So if you look at your personal credit report, it'll be what we'll call header information. So it'll be your name, your ID number, because those are the things that uniquely identify you, that we know that that's you, Mike, or that's Thabo. And that will verify with Home Affairs. And then you'll get contact information, previous addresses. So contact information will be telephone numbers and addresses. And obviously over time people move, so we'll have historical addresses as well. And then you'll then start getting what will be the transactional information to do with credit payment profiles. So if you've had a relationship with a bank and you had a loan with the bank, how you performed on that loan will be submitted. If you've had a relationship with a retailer and how you performed on paying that account with the retailer, that information will get submitted. The credit providers are all required to, by law, to provide that information. And the reason the information is provided is so that there's an equitable view of who you are as a consumer, so that other lenders can make more informed decisions about you. Because remember, the biggest thing is you're trying to avoid lending money to people that are going to then go into stress. And that's why this information sharing is quite important. There's also then, outside of that information that comes from the lenders and credit providers, what we call publicly available information. So it can be if you had the unfortunate event of actually having a judgment taken out against you. So that's information that we get from the courts, or your payment default information and the likes.
Okay. Now, Thabo, Namesh is asking a question on chat there. Does Clearscore give you an accurate reading, and Transunion?
So Transunion will have a different score that you'll get from Experian, and all credit bureaus have their own IP, so to speak, in terms of how we'll collect the same data, but how we choose to model and create risk scores, because all the score is doing is ranking you relatively to other people to say how risky are you, or how good a risk are you, or how bad a risk are you. So to say accurate reading, I'd say it's an accurate reflection based on your payment profile data that we'll have. And Clearscore uses Experian, so that will match to what we'll be reflecting on the Experian Credit Bureau.
Okay. Another question that you might see it there, quite interesting. How do I become financially fit if I haven't paid any of my accounts for more than 6 years?
Well, that's something that you can actually work on in terms of your rehabilitation, right? I think, and this is the important thing that people miss, is when you start getting into trouble, lenders don't want you to go completely bad. You know, people are in the business of lending because when you pay them back, they are then in a position to be able to lend more out there and everybody else can grow. So if you think of it of when people get into distress, what typically tends to happen is they get into a hide mode. When what you should actually be doing is calling your lender yourself and trying to come up with a new arrangement to manage the situation that you're in. And it was very evident if you looked at what happened in 2020, because as the world went into complete lockdown, people's jobs got into, some were lucky to keep the job, but at a lower income. Some people and their businesses were completely hurt. But what would happen is if you went and confronted your lender, you could come up with arrangements where they'll give you payment holidays. They went as far as payment holidays because if you've got no income, if you're not selling, there is no cash flow. So you can make arrangements in terms of how you rehabilitate yourself by paying back with a new agreement with that lender. Depending on the types of loans there were and the size of those loans and the state they were in, you can actually get onto a way, and it's called rehabilitation for a reason, because it's a process that takes a while.
Sure.
But
Okay.
you don't have to worry that if you were in a bad state, you remain in a bad state. You can behave yourself into a better state.
Okay, thank you for that, Thabo. Now, getting back to, we discussed personal credit report. What information is on a business credit report?
A business credit report. Okay, the business credit report also similarly will have header information. So it'll be the company name, the company registration number. Again, we'll have address information, holding structures, because you know some companies are subsidiaries, so you'll have the holding company reflected. We have the company type, the industry sector that you're in. In some cases, you also have the BE status, because we do get access to people's BE certificates. And then your financial performance and information. When your financial year end is, we collect financial statements on your own performance from the companies themselves. So it's quite aggregated in terms of how much information can we get on performance and how much information can we get that's fairly static. So for instance, with the company, the board of directors might change. So as and when that changes, we'll get that updated via Subsea.
Okay. Where does Experian get the information from?
Okay, multiple sources, and I just spoke to one of them. So on the consumer side, we'll get information from Home Affairs because we've got to verify a couple of things with them. So Home Affairs doesn't give us information. They verify certain pieces of information. Because why it's important that we know about Mike is part of the service we also offer is preventing fraud. So you want to know that if somebody's making an application using the name Mike with a certain ID number and Mike is deceased, there's a problem, because that can't be the truth. So there'd have to be an investigation there. So Home Affairs we use more to verify than actually source the data. The credit providers themselves will have to supply the data because they're giving us information on your performance. And then also the consumers themselves also give us information, because one of the big things that's important, especially in a market like ours where we're emerging, is how we grow the permission-based element of the information that we get. Because remember what I said, the more that I know about you and I can reflect the truth about you, the better informed somebody is to make a decision as to whether to lend to you or not. Okay. So the permission-based information is also becoming a big thing in terms of what we source from the actual consumer or from the actual business.
Okay. Okay. Now, Thabo, we're getting a lot of points around this issue. Can you give us some tips for managing your business credit reputation? Okay,
so I think the one is the working within your terms. So it's especially in business, because business is a lot more tricky in that you don't get paid, you've got a domino effect, you've got to prioritize your wages, then you don't pay a trade creditor because you don't need to buy from them, you're going to go somewhere else. So that kind of juggling becomes a bit tricky for you to manage. So I think it's quite important that at least you consistently pay people, even if you're not paying, or make different arrangements, right? What you must not do is completely ignore what your obligations are. And I think the biggest issue with when you get into financial constraints is not renegotiating. When you do that, then it really makes for a different relationship, particularly when you look at also with the banks, in that if they're not just classified as something that goes into default, they'll treat it appropriately relative to the new terms, which means your profile then gets to have a performance that's relatively right, and that's what keeps your score at a good rating.
Okay. So I think that, you know, taking responsibility, confronting the situation, don't hide, can all help a great deal. Even if you get yourself into trouble as a business, you know, take that responsibility and face it, and come up to other form of another plan to repay. And I think that, as you say, creditors will respect that, and they'll work with you. In the most, they will work with you. I've got another question coming. Let me first ask you this question, Thabo. On the other side, key tips for managing your personal credit reputation.
They're pretty similar with the personal credit reputation. It's just that the credit reputation is so much more visible because it's got a lot more volume in it in terms of what's happening, and it's a lot more available in terms of what comes through from the credit providers. And why you want to be in a better position on a personal reputation is, as your score deteriorates and your behavior deteriorates, it makes it harder for you next time you do want to borrow. And the umbrella joke, it does rain eventually. So you want to be able to get an umbrella when it rains. And in that sense, that's why the paying as you've agreed the terms, or renegotiating the terms when you're hitting a constraint, is important. It's a communication story that gets taken for granted, because there's shame, obviously, when you can't afford to honor what you were committed to. But confronting the people that you're dealing with and having a conversation, it's painful, it feels degrading, but you often get to a better solution that way than when you hide, because typically when you hide, it gets a lot harder to then resurface and actually try and have a conversation, because your shame is all that much louder, if I can call it that.
Okay. Now, Thabo, I've got another question. I've got 2 credit cards. I never use them. I don't go into credit. Is that a good or a bad thing for a credit score?
That's a trick question. That's a very tricky question, Mike. So it's, if you've got 2 credit cards and you're not using them, but you've got other credit products, how you're behaving on those credit products will weigh more in terms of what will happen with your score. Now, different bureaus will do different things in terms of how we weight these variables, but not using your credit facility is not a bad thing. Okay. Using your credit facility and paying it well is a good thing, in that it increases, because we've got more information about the performance. Because remember, it's a performance story that we're telling. So if you've got no performance, it's not a bad thing. But if you've got performance that's good, it's a good thing. If you've got performance that's bad, that's a bad thing.
So if I've got a credit card, Thabo, and I use it every month and I pay it back in full every month, or more than I should every month, it's a pretty good thing for a credit score.
In theory, yes. That's why I say that's a tricky question to answer, because different models do different things. But you are better off doing that than getting a credit card and not paying it, even for a small amount.
No, Thabo, I certainly want to encourage everybody out there to go and use all their credit cards now.
And that's why I don't want to. That's exactly what I fear, that I don't want people to think that they must not go crazy.
Like I must go out and use all my credit. No, but I understand your point. You know, I think the whole point here is, you know, whatever credit you've got, honor it, and I think that honor it at the right time and what you need to, and I think possibly that's the right way to look at that. Now, Thabo, how can an NSBC member get their personal and or business credit report from Experian?
Okay, so for your personal one, you can actually go onto our portal, My Credit Check. So it's mycreditcheck.co.za, and that's remember I said the consumer one is a much more seamless effort in terms of when you get over there, you register, We verify and authenticate that it is you, because we really have to be careful that we only give you your personal information. And once we've verified you, so you'll go through a couple of steps where we'll ask you some questions as well that have to do with you and your personal profile. So questions that only you are likely to know rather than anybody else. Then you're registered, and it's a matter of minutes. The business process is a little bit more full of effort. And that's because if you think in a business, typically there's multiple principals, not necessarily just one. So us authenticating and validating that has to take in more points of data to just make sure that that principal is also authorized to be accessing the information on the business. So there's a questionnaire that you will complete and you can send it through to us. And just by the way, over the next couple of sessions, we'll be having our consultants who will be coming and joining the sessions, where you can actually look at your individual profiles if you wish to do so, because obviously some people also will not understand some information if it's new or foreign to them in terms of what's involved and what it means and what the implications are. But once we've received the form on our side from a business perspective, we'll process it, and then you will get feedback within a 5-day period.
Okay. Oh, that's and I must be honest, you know, I urge, and there's no agenda here. I urge everyone out there, you know, start off with your personal credit score, do it every 6 months, and then of course get used to doing your business credit score. But just on a business credit score, Thabo, I would imagine that a sole proprietorship is one person. It will be the same as an individual. So there's no partners, there's no other co-directors or anything like that. So I would imagine. I know there's a certain amount of sole proprietorships out there, but as you say, it becomes more complex when there's multiple directors, and of course, as you mentioned. But I think the exercise is important to go through in any event, because I think it's necessary, you know, especially in time when you want bridging funding, when you want to buy a car for your company, or whatever it may be. So I think it's a great exercise to do that. Now, Tom.
And just to interrupt you, Mike, just to interrupt you before you carry on. What is important when you're a smaller business, how you are as an individual has a big impact on the score of the business, because you're so intertwined. That relationship, you can't get away from it. You really have to make sure that you look after both, because how you are as the person is going to have an impact as well on your score of the business, because you are the business.
Yeah, so I would imagine, Tom, if you've got 3 directors and you've all got exceptional credit scores, it makes a big impact on your business credit score.
Correct.
Great stuff.
Correct.
Now, Thabo, why take the time to complete the Experian Business Credit Profile Questionnaire?
And this is an important one, because sometimes, especially in today's world where we're very instant, the filling in of that questionnaire feels like, well, why am I doing all this thing? But remember what I said about, first we've got to make sure that the validations are correct. By nature of what you know, I know that you definitely are who you say you are relative to your business. And then in terms of the business questionnaire itself and your business profile, remember we're looking to make things more visible, because especially in the business environment, the information is not as, I nearly said thick, which is an industry word which does not help in this instance, but it's not as consistent and rich as it is in the consumer credit space, because business lending by its nature is fragmented in that the banks don't share all their business information, and typically trade credit, which is a very big space for normal terms of how you fund from a working capital perspective, is not well shared either. So we have to go through the efforts of sourcing that ourselves from the individual players. So the more visible your business becomes, the easier it is then to decision on the business and decision correctly, more importantly.
Okay, all right. Now, Thabo, who can our members speak to if they want to discuss their business credit report with someone at Experian?
Well, if you're going to be, I think the next one is next month, right? Our financially fit campaign. So next month, the 11th of February campaign is the one where we will be having some of our consultants who will be present to actually take you through your report. But it is important that if you want to go through your own individual one, you bring it with you, because it's got to be your one that you will have actually gone through the process we've just discussed. and then they can actually take it through, because we can't just pull it out. You actually have to have it there with you for us to then discuss it. And similarly, when people typically on the consumer side have a question or an issue with the actual credit report themselves, we've got a consumer care team where people will dial in if they've got queries, or more contact us via email, which is actually the most effective way when you've got queries. And being 2022 in the era of digital, we're also launching a bot so that people can have a chat that's online that gives the quick feedback loop on some of the more simpler answers.
Right. Now, Thabo, before we close off our amazing discussion, you spoke briefly on it now. What other topics will this campaign, this Financially Fit campaign, cover?
Well, your credit wellness is obviously theme and anchor to who you are, what the credit bureau does, as in what information we do host, what you can do about your own credit information, particularly managing your own records. That question about if I haven't been behaving well for 6 years, what do I do? That's quite close to my heart, because some of the things that people don't realize is they can actually repair their own credit report dealing directly with the credit bureau. You've got a whole lot of intermediaries that come in between, some acting well, some acting not so well, but that's the nature of the world that we live in. But you do not have to worry that you can't contact the credit bureau yourself direct, because you do have that access. And there are multiple bureaus in the country, obviously, because we're quite an evolved market for a bureau. We're actually quite mature if you compare to the world, because not many places have a credit bureau where you've got both positive and negative information. I think that's where the stigma comes from, where people think all a credit bureau is blacklisting, because in some markets it is only negative information, whereas in our market, as I mentioned to you, 99% of our data is positive relative to the consumer.
Yeah, and so I think that's what you said. Everyone, no matter who you are, where you come from, you can become financially fit, and it's just a process. Talk to Experian. They're an amazing team. They'll get you where you want to be, and I think it's such an imperative task. And I know there's many people here who are so refreshed about hearing this, Thabo, because many believe that I lost my business, or I didn't get an income. I've lost my house. I'm financially destroyed forever. I'm a financial prisoner. But that's not the case. But I think, like you say, take responsibility, confront it, and do what you need to do, and talk to the experts like you guys. And you guys will help these people to get to where they need to be. So, Thabo, before we close off, I'm not sure if you may have first of all, thank you for this discussion. It's certainly enlightening, insightful, and absolutely critically important. And I'm truly grateful personally. And I know the NSBC team is as well. And do you perhaps have a closing message for all our attendees out there?
I think just to emphasize the courage thing, and the good thing is people that start their own business have a lot of courage. So that already is within you. And the tenacity story, because you have to be resilient to run your own business. And how you've got to look at this journey, particularly if you look at your report and you don't like the performance that it's reflecting of you, it's not the end of the world. It's just where you're starting. It's not where you finish. And it's something that the more you learn, the more you know, the more you use it as your tool, as a ticket to the game, to then grow your business. And I'm more than confident, by the nature of the makeup of a business person who's starting a business, that's not a hard ask.
Thabo, thank you. Thabo Hermanus, the Chief of Credit and Bureau Services, Experian Africa. We're really grateful. We appreciate. Thank you so much. I know this is the beginning of a great journey. I know you and I are going to share some red wine together, or some Sauvignon Blanc from Hermanus. But truly wonderful engagement, and I know that our attendees really appreciate. And until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you very much to everybody, and good luck.
Sometimes we need that. Take care. You can just turn off your camera and your mic, Thabo, and that'll be great. Leanne, how amazing was that?
Mike, I must say I learned a lot. I actually knew shockingly little about credit bureaus and your score. And for me, the most exciting thing is that if you go through a bad patch and things go wrong, you can fix it. It's not just this mark against your name for the rest of your life. So yeah, I genuinely learned a lot, and thank you, Thabo, for using such accessible analogies so that all of us can really understand how everything works. We are now going into the networking power hour. Mike, any networking tips for our attendees?
Well, I think the last time I said, virtual networking is the flavor of the day. It's one of the biggest global trends right now. One would think that when a pandemic arrives, the days of networking is over, but it's a new wave of networking. It's amazing. Most of our attending delegates over the past 2 years will say that this virtual environment is more successful for them. And the big thing is, think like a doctor, listen to people, help people, take people's pain away, and be authentic. Be true to yourself, help others, and listen. This is not a selling platform. Network, it's about building relationships. And in time, you'll be amazed what the kind of business transactions will come out of that. So guys, enjoy it, network. And I would just like to finally say to Thabo, let's give him a big round of applause, because I found that extremely insightful.